trade war, and tariff. So much had been mentioned about them, but do you really understand them? And is there an uncovered side that no mainstream media is telling you? The headlines are gobbled up by these words for the past weeks and months, and are expected to do so for the near future as well. Market is spooked by the uncertainty and risk, sparking sell-offs, driven by hedge funds deleveraging and de-risking. While the sell-offs are not the worst we have seen in history, the speed of the market crumbling down did take everyone by surprise. Investors who are used to the bull market in the last couple of years are suddenly confronted with fear they had never experienced before. Beyond all the mainstream bashing of tariffs and how it could backfire, leading to inflation spiking and drop in the GDP, have you ever wondered if there are things not spoken by the mainstream media? Are tariffs or the use of tariffs always going to lead to disastrous outcomes without any saving grace at all? We are here to offer an alternative understanding of the current trade war. It is going to be a rough ride, so buckle up. Welcome to The Money Dove, a channel all about stocks, options, investing, and financial decisions, to embark on a journey towards financial freedom. Be sure to like and subscribe. Without mincing our words, tariffs at its very core are simply economic weapons. Economic weapons that the big countries could utilize against the exporters. But hey, don't they all say that tariffs would always backfire, hurting the nation who is imposing the tariffs more than they do on the exporters? Wouldn't tariffs result in runaway inflation due to the additional cost of importing goods? Yes, that could be a possible outcome. However, if used correctly and precisely, tariffs would become a deadly weapon to force the price of the imports down, ripping billions of dollars off those poor exporting countries. How is that even possible? It is only possible when the country imposing the tariff is a big enough buyer or importer, and any change in their demand would adversely impact the international price of the imported goods. The imposition of tariffs would increase the local price of goods, reducing the demand in the process. With demand dropping and price weakening, the importing country can now buy the same goods at a cheaper price. And yes, the local price of those goods are higher, but the higher tax revenue from collecting tariffs more than offset it. The government could then decide how much of those tax revenue to keep or redistribute to the people. What a wonderful deal, isn't it? Now, that sounds a little idealistic. Let's get to the realistic part of it. The trading partner that had tariffs imposed on them would not just stay there like a sitting duck, getting attacked and not retaliating at all. In fact, if they are a big and powerful country as well, it is almost certain that they would retaliate, and here's why. This is the typical case of a prisoner dilemma. Imagine both countries only have one chance to choose an action: raise tariff or do nothing. They do not know what action the opposing country will take, but they know that regardless of what action the opposing country takes, it will always benefit themselves more if they raise the tariff. This would result in both countries raising the tariffs on each other, landing themselves in an outcome that both countries would be badly damaged. This outcome is worse than the outcome where both parties do nothing, but due to the incentive presented to both countries, they simultaneously took the action that led to the worse outcome for each other. Are they doomed to accept an outcome worse for each other then? Fortunately, reality isn't a one-turn game. Knowing that each country is better off in the long run if they do not raise tariffs on each other, long-term cooperation is possible. This is why countries negotiate free trade agreements. With free trade agreement, country A gets to enjoy cheap toys from country B, and country B gets to enjoy cheap fuel from country A. A happy ending for everyone. Now, what if the two countries involved are of different size and power? On our left, we have big and mighty country A, and on our right, we have small but hardworking country B. Here is how the different outcomes look like now. Because of how dependent country B is on its export to country A, it would be devastating for country B if country A imposes a tariff on country B. On the flip side, there is barely anything country B could do to country A that could cause it much damage. Because of this, country A can demand for the world from country B when it raises its tariff. More than just expecting country B to reduce the price of its exports, country A could use the threat of a tariff to ask for a lot more. And by that, we mean a lot more. For example, it could even ask for country B to purchase and hold the treasury bonds of country A, indirectly borrowing money to country A and reducing its financing cost. Or it could ask country B to subsidize its export to country A by providing export rebates, indirectly taking money directly out from the pocket of country B. The sky is the limit when it comes to such bullying. With all that being said, how effective and beneficial is the use of tariffs then? If designed precisely, tariffs can be a wonderful weapon in extracting values from the trading partners. However, if used sloppily, it could result in a lot of disruption in trades that could ultimately backfire on the country imposing the tariffs. Also, even if a big country managed to extract more value for itself through the use of tariffs, it does make the entire world worse off. That is because tariffs distort price and efficient allocation of resources and production capacity between countries. Wouldn't it be a wonderful world then, if we are friendly to each other and work in cooperation? In fact, it is free trade and the efficient allocation of resources globally that drove growth worldwide. Without free trade, it is questionable whether the world would have advanced as much as it did in the last century. However, it is unavoidable that shrewd politicians with a businessman mindset see the amount of money on the table and decided they want more of that for their own country. And they might succeed at it indeed, if the bargaining chips are all in their hands. Successful it might be, but it is also extremely predatory, destroying trust and goodwill in the process. Having said all that, how do we think the current trade war would play out? Here is our prediction. We see the world having excess production capacity at the moment, to the extent that there are actually countries experiencing deflation instead. Because of the excess capacity, buyers have strong bargaining power over the sellers, and it is likely that the small countries would fall in line, giving in to the demand of the big bully. We are also likely to see a further decoupling between the big bully and their greater competitor on the world stage. It is very unlikely that they would give in to each other's request, and this would become a war of attrition. However, for the big bully, it is all right for them, as long as they manage to get the smaller countries to fall in line and continue to provide cheap products. When it comes to tariffs negotiation, it is likely that a good portion of any tariffs would be absorbed by the exporters, be it directly by the companies producing the products, or export rebates given by the exporting country, or through devaluation of the exporter's own currencies. This is as good as indirectly paying for the budget deficit of the big bully. As trade deficit is also a concern, the smaller countries are likely to accept terms that would greatly increase their imports from the big bully in areas such as oil or weapons. Beyond that, we believe that the smaller countries would ultimately be made to buy sovereign bonds from the big bully, indirectly reducing the cost of financing for the big bully. Sounds like quite an unfair deal if it turns out to be true, isn't it? But hey, anything to survive, right? We do hope our forecast is wrong. However, we do think that the bully will come out on top this time round, given the current dynamics and imbalances between the supply and demand. That's all for this video, and thank you for your support. Let us know in the comments section what content you would like us to discuss next, and see you again